Benelli have created a proper adventure motorcycle for under €6,000. So this is our review of the Benelli TRK 502X. I've been riding this bike around the hills around here, on-road and off-road, and I can truly say that Benelli have created a proper adventure motorcycle for under €6,000. Amazing. The TRK 502X is a more extreme version of Benelli's TRK 502. That means it's meant for off-road focused rather than just on the road. The main changes in this are really the wheels. The wheels here are spoked alloys, 19-inch in the front, 17-inch in the rear. The 502 has just 17-inch cast alloys front and rear. The front wheel here is slightly thinner, making it more manageable off-road on the softer ground and bouncing through the rocks, meaning it's definitely a much more off-road focused machine. The tyres on the 502X are the Metzeler Torrance tyres. They're 85/15, 85 road, 15 off-road, but actually I found they handled really well off-road. They're definitely sufficient grip, and on the road too, they're a very good tyre. The 502X is quite a tall bike. It's got an 85cm high seat, kind of normal when it comes to adventure motorcycles. The ground clearance is 22 centimeters. This is definitely sufficient being off-road. That extra height given by the front tyre definitely helps with this. I'm 6 foot tall and I can put my feet pretty much flat on the ground. If you're a shorter rider, you might struggle a little bit with this, and also because it's quite a heavy bike too. You can buy a slightly lower seat than the standard one as an additional option to give you that little bit more flexibility if you are not quite so tall. The riding position is very good, very upright, very comfortable. You quite happily manage very long distances on this bike. Handlebars are nice and wide, seats nice and wide, very big and very comfortable. The way you sit on the 502X, you sit very in the bike, a bit like a Ducati Multistrada 950. So you feel very much part of the motorcycle, and although it's quite a heavy bike, you can use that weight then to help you ride. The way the tank is shaped is you fit your legs quite comfortably underneath, gives you a lot of wind protection there, so actually you can use this extra grip when you're cornering on the bike. Also when you're standing, there's quite a good area to rest your legs against if you want a bit of a rest whilst you're standing and riding off-road. The wind protection overall is very good. The screen's quite high. You've got these extra bits between the screen and the handguards. The handguards fully protect you. The screen is not adjustable, which is not so great, and therefore when it's a hot day you might have to stand up to try and get some wind passing through you. But I rode this on the highway and I had no problems with wind protection at all. I didn't feel buffeted around. I felt actually the wind protection's very good. It's just that adjustability and flexibility that you're lacking on this bike. So the weight of the bike is 235 kilos, kind of in line with a lot of adventure bikes, not quite as heavy as a GS, not quite as light as the 850 GS. However, the weight is quite manageable. I didn't really feel it as a massive problem. My worry was really the fact that it's got a 47 horsepower engine with 235 kilogram weight. But actually I didn't feel the weight was a massive problem. The only problems I had really when I was maneuvering it around car parks and actually just trying to get it off the center stand and things like that. You can definitely feel the weight though when you're riding. It's not low down like on a GS, so it's not quite as agile as a bike like that, but also it's not top heavy, which is for me one of the most important things when you're riding an adventure bike. The weight's very central, and actually as you get used to riding the bike, it handles really well. Power delivery is very smooth, and actually you can use that weight to help you steer around the corners. Off-road it felt very planted on the ground, and it also gave a lot of stability when I was riding the bike. So actually I never found it to be a problem. The engine is a liquid-cooled parallel twin, 500cc, same as in other bikes in the Benelli range, such as the Leoncino and obviously the 502 road-going version. The output from the engine is 47 horsepower, which obviously is not a lot for a bike of 230 kilos, but still it felt pretty sprightly. It got up to speed very quickly, you could get through the gears very quickly. Sure, as you get on the highway, you start reaching 130 kilometers an hour, it starts to lack power at that point. But generally speaking, I found in most situations it had enough power. If you were two up, however, fully laden with luggage, then that might be a different story. But actually, one person on the bike with a bag on the back, you could take you on a good adventure and you wouldn't even notice at all the fact that this is only 47 horsepower. The power delivery is very smooth on the bike. It's 360-degree timing on the parallel twin. And actually, they've done a really great job in that if this is 47 horsepower, then it's A2 license compliant. That means you can get your A2 license and go and buy a proper adventure motorcycle and have a great time. Fantastic. There are 6 gears on the 502X, the clutch is really light, and the gears are actually really forgiving, meaning that if you're going into a corner, you're not quite in the right gear, the bike will still work for you, which is great if you've just got your A2 license, you're not massively experienced on an adventure bike of this size, and so that can be really helpful. The suspension on the bike is great. For a bike of under 6,000 euros, you would never expect the suspension to be as good as it is. Benelli always seem to over-deliver on the suspension, which is fantastic. Front forks are 50 millimeters, upside down forks, no adjustability. The rear suspension is a central shock absorber, fully adjustable preload and rebound. I found the suspension really good. Off-road, I was bouncing up and down on the rocks and it could handle everything, just the right amount of movement. And on-road, the suspension was great too. I found it gives you a lot of confidence on a bike when you feel that you're totally in control of it, and I definitely did on the 502X. The ride on the bike is really comfortable. There are some vibrations from the engine, but they usually seem to come in when you get up to higher speeds, when you're on the highway. Most of the riding I did wasn't on the highway, and actually I never really noticed the vibrations that much. But there are these massive rubbers which will absorb any vibrations there are. These rubbers are removable on the foot pegs, but actually you have to unscrew them, so they're not just pop off, pop on, depending on your terrain that you're riding. And if you're riding off-road, I would definitely recommend removing the rubbers because they do get slippery when wet and you don't really want your feet slipping off as you're riding off-road. The 502X does have a massive big back brake pedal, which I found really useful. I like to be able to find the brake easy when I'm standing up and riding off-road. I did quite a lot of off-road riding on the bike, and so it was really useful. You don't be searching around for that. The brakes overall are pretty good. Front is twin floating discs, 320 millimeters, 4-pot calipers. The rear is a single disc, single caliper, 260 millimeters. I found stopping power was pretty good. Maybe on the road, you'd really want a little bit more on the front, but actually it meant that if you're riding off-road and you are using your front brake, it wasn't too grabby, which means you can use it to get rid of a little bit of speed off-road rather than just only using your back brake. The bike has ABS, and this can be turned off just by a button on the handlebars here. Very useful when you're riding off-road. In terms of other features on the bike, there aren't many electronic features. I mean, the bike is quite a basic adventure bike for 5,990 euros. I think that's probably what you'd expect. But actually, it definitely has enough to take you on a good adventure. Other features on the bike, the tank is a 20-litre tank. It also has this USB charger here, very, very useful when you're riding an adventure and you want your GPS or your phone to be working all the time and not running flat of battery when you're in the middle of nowhere. The skid plate on the 502X is not sufficient, I think, for a proper adventure bike. It only covers a slight bit on the bottom, and I think it should definitely come up around the front of the engine, covering the oil filter and protecting rocks flicking up off the front wheel. The crash bars on the bike come as standard as well as a center stand. This is fantastic for an adventure bike, especially for new to riding adventure bikes. Crash bars are very helpful just in case you drop it. Even when you're slow maneuvering around a car park, it's really easy to drop a bike that's 230 kilos. This luggage rack on the back, I think, is an additional extra, which looks pretty nice, except for the way the lights have shifted to the back here. They've got these wires here which look pretty cheap and nasty, which is a shame because actually the bike overall looks pretty good. I mean, in terms of looks on the bike, it's quite modern looking. It's got some LED daytime running lights, LED indicators, which all make a really nice modern feeling and looking bike. It's got the Benelli trellis frame running throughout it. The cockpit is very neat and tidy. It has a digital display for speed and gears and fuel, but an analog rev counter. And it looks really nice and neat. Some of the cable ties are a little bit cheap looking, but actually it's a pretty nice looking setup there. On the 502X, the exhaust has this high end can here as standard. Benelli have done a really good job of having a great sounding exhaust, even with Euro 4 compliance. So who would buy a Benelli TRK 502X? Personally, I think a lot of people should take a look at this. It's 47 horsepower, so it suits anyone who's just passed their A2 license and wants a proper adventure machine to go off riding on an adventure with their mates. I mean, it's absolutely perfect for that, and definitely you should take a look at that. Obviously, anyone who's on a budget, it's under 6,000 euros, which is fantastic for the amount of bike you get for that money. Even if you're not on a budget, I think this bike is worth taking a look at. I had a lot of fun riding it, off-road and on-road, and it handled everything with ease. Gave me a lot of confidence when I was riding it. The power wasn't too strong to be intimidating. Obviously, it's a little bit tall, so you have to be careful that you can handle a bike that's this height. Could it take you around the world? I don't know. But actually, I think if you're in the market for an adventure machine, take a look at this bike. You could save yourself a lot of money and have a massive amount of fun. Definitely worth it. If you like what you see, go and check it out. Thank you guys for watching this. I hope you enjoyed the review and found it useful. If you want more reviews like this, please hit subscribe and we'll see you next time.